Who's wrong and who's wronger? In this corner, followed by millions, James the Exploding Unicorn Breakwell. And in that corner, ignored by millions, Steve Dash Rinko Levens.
Blazing afternoon sun to record another episode of Wrong and Wronger. You probably can't see us anyway, but if you can through the light, you might realize there's something different this week. For those of you who are watching the video version of this podcast, there is no dividing screen. Both the host and co-host, or two co-hosts if you will, are in the same shot, and one of them is not Steve. We have finally achieved the improvement we've been talking about forever. Yeah. With us today is Betsy Breakwell, my oldest daughter. She is 11, and unlike Steve, she can work me into her busy schedule. So this week, she's going to fill in. How are you doing, Betsy?
Good. Tired.
Well, you are about to be exhausted by the banality that is Wrong and Wronger. First, a correction for last week. Before we get into this, I said detritus for debris floating around, which is not a word, much like Fravis, which is also entirely fictional.
Those don't sound like real words.
Fravis is not and never will be a real word. Detritus, unfortunately, is also not a real word. The word is detritus. So for your grammar lesson for today, I was very, very wrong. But luckily, Steve is not here to say it to hear that. And he will never, ever, 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 ever watch this episode, so he won't know.
Yeah, the episodes he's not in, he doesn't watch, because...
No, he doesn't even watch the episodes we are, and neither of us does. It makes the non-existent editing process very, very awkward. So, we don't really argue about things anymore, but I have a plan for how we can get by in a Steve-less episode of Wrong and Wronger. So, one of us is just going to have to be Steve. And I was going to make you do it, Betsy, but then I realized that you don't know anything about Steve because I've sheltered you like a good parent.
Well, I know he had snakes at one point.
He has everything going wrong all the time. If there's a bad life choice, he's made it.
Didn't his house flood or something?
Yes, he sold his house, and then he was living in a garage, and the garage flooded.
And then when he got the house, they had snakes.
Yeah. Yes, there are rattlesnakes, hence why it's called Rattlesnake Ranch. I wasn't sure what you were talking about for a minute. The rattlesnakes are so many disasters ago that I completely forgot about them. So
how many disasters have there been?
Oh, we're going to get into that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to role play. I have wasted so much of my life listening to Steve and his disasters, and then spent so much of my life highlighting it for you on this podcast, that what we're going to do today is I am going to be Steve. I am going to enact his mannerisms, his tone of speech, his voice. If you are listening to this on the podcast, you will not be able to tell the difference between me and him.
So that means I'm you.
Yes, you put it together. You're a quick one. So,
hi, I'm James Breakwell.
That is exactly how I sound, complete with the arms out to the side. You should flex while you're doing it, too. Maybe make a superhero pose. Okay, so I'm warning you. You have to be witty and hilarious and also beautiful at all times to effectively be James Breakwell.
Beautiful? Wow.
Beautiful, handsome, amazing, blinding with radiance. Any of these adjectives will do. And to be Steve, I just sort of have to exist in a cesspool of despair.
You just have to exist and be Steve.
Yes, be Steve. Okay.
Don't be anything else but Steve.
Everybody does not want to be Steve.
No one.
The one goal in life. Okay, so let's take a moment to get into character. James, you're never going to believe what happened this week on the ranch.
What?
Well, I was out there tiptoeing past all of the rattlesnakes when suddenly my lawnmower fell in a sinkhole.
Why?
Your stunned silence was appropriate. Because in addition to everything else going wrong, my property is now full of sinkholes.
Did like a time warp thing just spawn under your house or something? Like
So you're thinking of Land of the Lost, which I am impressed you got that reference since you were only born in 1985 and I am from the 1800s. But yes,
Very
that classic 60s or 70s Saturday morning cartoon show where their station wagon falls down and then they see a portal in front of them and for some reason they drive through it and they go back to the time of dinosaurs. This was not that kind of sinkhole.
Oh.
They made a remake of it too that you, James, might have seen because, again, you are a baby and know nothing about the world or pop culture. But
Hold on, I have a question.
Yes.
What colors were the sinkholes?
sinkholes, they're just holes. Like, what color would you think a hole is? It's in the dirt.
But it'd be so cool if they were like colors.
No, it is dirt colored. Like everything else on the ranch, it is devoid of both texture and color.
And
it is blah.
It just bleh, and disaster.
Yes. And so anyway, the sinkhole is probably 100 feet deep. It is.
Oh wait, you heard the lawnmower drop?
Yes, it's a riding lawn. Actually, this was the one we tow behind a four-wheeler because the other lawnmower exploded or got possessed by demons.
How?
I don't remember. What do you mean, how?
Like,
A demon came up and possessed the mower and it stopped working, so
why
I
did
sent
you
it
pick
off to
that
repairs.
house?
Well, when we bought it, we didn't know it was full of rattlesnakes and demons. And okay, so we knew about the rattlesnakes. We didn't know about the demons. We didn't know about the mysterious grave. And we didn't know about the sinkhole.
When did you mention a mysterious grave?
Literally every episode. Last episode, you spent 20 minutes trying to get me to open up the grave while I stood on it. Mrs. Steve doesn't think it's a grave because she is wrong. It is in fact a grave.
It's probably a cellar.
It's on top of a hill. It's a pile of rocks. And why would you pile rocks on top of a hill? That's the worst place. Rocks are heavy. Why would you carry them up
It's
there?
a mysterious grave, yeah.
Yes, it's a mysterious grave, and I will never open it because I have no sense of adventure, and I hate everything fun in life.
Well, okay. So I have an idea.
Okay.
Do you want to get your lawnmower back? And everything else that's gone in the sinkholes?
What else do you think is in the sinkhole?
You said sinkholes popped up everywhere, so like
I did say
basically
sinkholes,
everything a bunch of stuff could be in there.
Well, I'm assuming the presence of other sinkholes. I've only lost one mower, but I only have one mower right now.
So you want to get it back, right?
I would like to get my mower back out of the sinkhole.
Okay,
Yes.
so here's what you do. So you
Okay.
said it's 100 feet deep.
Yes.
Right?
Straight down.
So what you could try to do is be like a rock climber, but
Okay.
you're not going up, you're going down.
Okay.
So you get like a big nail like the size of your head or something.
A nail the size of my head. Okay, I'm writing this down.
You put it, you tie rope around it.
Okay.
You shove it in the ground. You make sure the rope is like at least 200 feet, okay?
Okay.
And then you tie it around yourself. And you want to make sure there's a camera crew there just in case something goes horribly wrong so then everybody can laugh at it.
Okay, that's good. So they're not good. They're not there to help me. They're just there to laugh. Okay.
Yeah,
We're on the same
duh.
page there. Okay.
And then you try to slowly lower yourself in the sinkhole with no way to get back up
Okay.
and to just get your lawnmower. And once you're down there, you untie the rope, you tie it to the lawnmower, and you have your wife pull it up. And then you just stay down in the sinkhole because, yeah.
Okay, I respect this plan on a few levels. So I thought perhaps you were going to tell me, Steve Olivas, to carry the lawnmower out because you were confused because you thought that I was me, James Breakwell, super strong and capable of lifting a lawnmower. But of course, Steve Olivas cannot do such a thing, and I am Steve Olivas.
Well-
but Mrs. Steve probably could lift a mower.
Probably. And then you can just stay down there. Every so often she drops a basket of food or whatever down there. And you just stay down in the empty void. Nobody has to see your face again. But we get the lawnmower.
You are an effective James. That is exactly what I would say. But that is what I would say as James Breakwell. As Steve, I will say, but why would she leave me down there? If she's strong enough to lift a pull-behind mower, she could surely lift me, a tiny manlet.
Well, there'd be nothing for you to grasp onto. And, like, as she's pulling you up, you'd probably be like, ah!
You could just throw back down the rope. I would tie it around my waist. But why?
But it's already been used by the lawnmower.
You can't use a rope twice? Rope is infinitely
No,
reusable.
not for you, Steve.
This is ridiculous. This is why we don't talk, James. This is case number one. Why I will never invite you over. You will never stay in my tiny guest cabin with no electricity, with a toilet that's backed up, and probably a bunch of rattlesnakes in the toilet.
I never want to go there.
Are you sure? Not even to get away from your 2 pigs and 95 kids and all of that?
No, I just don't want to see you in person, Steve.
That is-
No.
I don't. Why do we do this podcast? Why do we come here?
Because of you.
I would rather go spend time with the sinkhole and my missing mower than sit here and listen to you say how you don't want to see my face, which is actually quite beautiful when it is hidden by a beard and curly hair and you can't actually see that much of it.
But there is one thing you could do.
Okay.
So once you get the mower up,
Yes.
your wife could mow the lawn and whatever, and then just put all the shavings in there, and then over the years it builds up, and eventually you might be able to get out, but it would be a while.
James, do you know how long it would take to pile up 100 feet of grass clippings?
That's the point.
I mean, I appreciate your faith in my health that you think I'm going to live for another 100 or 200 years, but I just don't know. I keep eating all these weird and strange foods at diners, burgers the size
Why?
of my head with 90, because that's what you do when you're in rural Tennessee, I believe is the state I live in. When you're out here, you go to the diner and you meet the locals, and then the locals show up uninvited on your property, especially if they're the sheriff. And they all talk about you and gossip behind your back, but that's what you just do. You go out there and you socialize, but only after you get stuck on the interstate for 2 hours, because there's always a wreck on it every single day, because nobody in Tennessee can drive.
That makes sense.
Yes, Tennessee cannot drive. Everyone in Tennessee hates me, Steve Olivas.
I have a question. So are there any sinkholes in your house?
That's an interesting question. My house is on a slab, so if there were a sinkhole underneath, it's possible the slab could be supporting the house above it without the house falling in. Now, if the sinkhole gets wide enough to reach one of the corners, presumably the house would tip. The house is not tipping yet.
But just wait till the sinkhole gets big enough, and then it lets the house in, and then you have a house to live in underground, and you would have a house to live in. It would be very, very nice. And all the grass clippings can be your new lawn and everything. But the one thing you won't get Wi-Fi, so we won't be able to do the podcast. But that will be a plus.
You are not getting rid of me that easily, because despite everything I say, this is the one glimmer of joy in my sad and meaningless life. I have to be able to do something with all of these terrible, terrible memories.
Yeah.
And what I will do with them is save them in this podcast for all of the $0 that we earn from our tiny, tiny audience. Which reminds me, James, you told me earlier that we needed to give a shout out to some people who went to see you, James Breakwell, and not me, Steve Olivas, because I am terrible and no one ever wants to meet me in person. But the people who met you, I believe...
Well, that's because I wrote books, and you just sit there and
I write books, too.
Sure you do.
I see. The condescension. I don't know why I put up with this, but I need to give a shout out to Nate and to Heather and Christina, who I met in person, and two of those three, when I met them in Lafayette, Indiana, they said they listened to the podcast. I met two podcast listeners in person, but I don't remember if Heather or Christina listened to the podcast, and I would hate to defame them in that way by saying they listen when they don't, because that is a mark of shame that no one wants to live with voluntarily. So one or the other of you, whichever one listened, my condolences. Isn't that amazing? Now we have two people in addition to Judy P.
Yes. I've heard you talk about Judy P.
You should, James Breakwell, because
Oh,
you and
yeah,
I
I'm the
talk
one that
about,
talks.
Yes, you talk about her constantly. But
Isn't she like our one truly fan?
Yes, she is probably the one person, maybe the third person who will listen to this podcast. We will see. She would be sad if I were in a sinkhole. She would come and rescue me, even if you and Mrs. Steve would not. Because a sinkhole. You know what? We're just going to call them Steve holes now. As my property collapses back into hell, we're just going to say that, you know what? They're Steve holes because they only form on Steve's property.
Yeah, everything bad only happens on Steve's property. It's like it's a secret boundary around your property that just says everything bad is going to happen to this property and nothing else.
I'm actually thinking of opening a real estate service because I am so bad at picking properties that are haunted and cursed that I can go and help you find a haunted house. If you're like a ghost hunter or something else like that, if you want someplace that's absolutely cursed and everything bad will happen to you, come to me. And if I think buying a property is a good idea,
it's probably not.
It's a bad. No, not probably. Definitely.
Oh, definitely. 100% guarantee.
Yes. Then there's also the deer, James. I gotta say, my property's not all bad. There are deer. Lots of deer. You know where they are?
In your front yard.
In the sinkhole. All in the sinkhole. They went right on down. Whole herd of them.
I mean, at least there's no more deer for you to deal with.
I like deer. Deer
Oh.
are good. The coyotes are bad. I don't like coyotes. You know where the coyotes are?
On your property.
Yes, not in the sinkhole. They are too
They like
slinky and
avoided
clever.
the sinkhole.
They did. For all I know, they are digging the sinkholes and then covering them up so that mowers and deer fall into it. 'Cause
Or
coyotes-
Steve.
Or Steve. I have not fallen in one yet, just the mower.
Well, I mean, why would you be here if you had fallen in? And then you wouldn't know my great plan.
This is a plan. I'm not going to say great. It's a little, you know
It's
what?
great.
I would describe it as Fravis.
What?
And I misused my own word. Fravis is like when you toss Legos across the floor. A Fravis of Legos.
When would you ever need to use that word?
I just used it right now. A Fravis of Legos.
For the wrong reason. And you were just explaining it. And when you explain things, you don't normally add the word that you explain it with.
The definition of Fravis includes Fravis. I am full of made-up
But
words.
then
that
that's
no one
not the right
uses.
definition, because the definition can't have the word in it.
The definition can have the word in it. Define definition. That's right.
Oh, it's something that explains another thing.
You and your English degree. I majored in psychology, something that's actually useful, that we need in the world.
How often do you actually use that tactic? I use this every day because English is the language we talk.
I'm a professional psychologist. I do psychology things all the time. I go in
Sure.
my office and I sit there and I stare at your picture in my bathroom and I ponder the laptop box I'm never going to open. And sometimes, for some reason that nobody understands, clients come and pay me money to listen to their problems, and I give advice just as bad as what I give out on this podcast, and just as bad as what I follow myself.
You listen?
I listen to what?
You listen to people?
I listen to them, not to you, not to me. I listen to the
Not to
people.
yourself.
If you pay me, if you want to turn this into a
No.
therapy session, I will listen to your
I don't need
problems,
that.
and I will say I understand, and also you are at fault, and only you can fix your problems, of which
Only-
there are many.
I think only you can fix your problems, which there are many of them, especially on your property.
That's what I'm saying. Only you can fix your problems.
Not
only
me.
I can fix my problems.
Yes, you.
We all fix our
I
own
don't
problems.
have any problems. You're the one with problems.
I have so many problems, and the main problem is sitting right across from me right now.
No, I think the main problem is your property.
The property is great. It just has
A few kinks.
A few 100,000 things wrong with it. But after it's done bankrupting me and trying to kill me and making me lose the will to live, after all that, it's going to be spectacular. Because eventually the deer carcasses are going to rot and the smell of dead deer will go away, and then new deer will come when they forgot with the horrible fate of the old deer.
And it will just happen in a circle, because then they'll fall into the sinkhole.
You know what? They'll fill up the Steve holes much faster than grass clippings will. So eventually all the deer will go in there. And you know what? I bought that archery set. I was going to go hunting. Now I don't have to. Now the deer will come to me and fall in the holes.
But then you just wasted money.
This is the way man was meant to hunt. Back in caveman days, they go and chase a herd of woolly mammoth off a cliff. Well, this is me using nature, using the sinkholes.
Okay, if you're hunting, you normally want to collect the food and not just go for the kill. Normally you want to collect the food and bring it back. Like in caveman times, they wouldn't just kill to kill. They would kill so they could survive.
Okay, if enough deer fall in the Steve hole, then at that point, I can take the ones from on top and eat those.
But what if they're rotting? Because you said the deer carcasses would just rot.
They'll be the freshest ones because they died last. You gotta listen, James. Listen.
Okay. But wait. What if they all fall on top of your mower? Then you'll never be able to get your one mower back.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna build a cover for the Steve hole that took my mower, so no deer fall in that. So all the dead deer are in the other Steve holes.
Okay.
And they will fill up, and I will eat like a king, and I will just make sure to never ever go to the bathroom, because even in the good cabin, I'm sure the plumbing is bad, and if I flush, the ball valves will explode, and it will shoot digested deer chunks right back up at me.
Ew.
Yes, ew. That is the plumbing situation there. By the way, do you want to talk about ball valves?
No. But sure.
Yes, that's the right answer. Let's talk about ball valves. These are a mysterious, remarkable...
Are they like something that connects plumbing?
Yes, they are something that connects plumbing that's supposed to cut off water and turn water back on.
But it does not work in your house and your house only.
Yes, excellent use of context clues. When I turn off water and try to turn it back on, it never turns back on.
Or you tried to turn it off and it never, or you tried to turn it off, but it never turns off, and you just build up your water bill.
Yes, because water valves, like Teamsters, only work when they want to work. And when they want to work is not when I want them to work. It is most unfortunate. And I have been building up a critical supply of ball valves to replace the defective ball valves.
But what if those ones don't work?
Well, I'm starting to suspect that the defective ball valves are infecting the good ball valves.
That would be the only reasonable explanation, right,
Yes.
Steve? Right?
I think there is some sort of contagious ball valve virus that's jumping from the bad ball valves to the good ball valves, and that is why my ball valves don't work.
Well, then you need to quarantine the good ones and quarantine them all. Separate them into two different sections, the good ones and the bad ones, and then just don't use your water for 3 months.
Okay, counterpoint, ball valve.
Well,
That's
I just
right.
one singular one.
Left you stunned silence.
Okay, so if you just have one singular one, though, but what if that one doesn't work?
Ball valve is a full sentence. You can say it, it's a noun, it's a verb, it's an exclamatory statement, and sometimes all that needs to be said is ball valve, and that situation fixes itself or doesn't fix itself because ball valves will cower to no man. They do what they want to do, and that is just that.
Okay.
Yes, it is okay. However, I have been thinking that maybe I should throw some of the ball valves in a Steve hole and see what would happen.
They would fall 100 feet.
Maybe, but I think the Steve holes are a result of a curse. And if the ball valves are equally cursed and you throw two curses together, they could cancel out and become uncursed.
Whatever you say.
You don't know much about curses. Maybe you should
Okay,
studied
I have a question. Who cursed you then?
Well,
who did you make mad enough to curse you?
I mean, there's a lot of possible candidates. There's the guy in prison who lost this property when we bought the house. There's the rattlesnakes who we displaced who were living in the vacant house for all those years and the dead mice inside. There's the whoever is buried in the grave under the rocks on top of the hill that somebody carried all the way up there, not for a random reason. Not if there was no body, the rocks would be just in a gully. It's possible the mower itself is doing the curses. Maybe it's committing suicide because it doesn't
Maybe it's
wanna
the
work for me.
Steve-holes. Or the deer just being tired of you being in that house.
Yeah, but why would the deer fall in the Steve holes if they are behind it? If the deer made the Steve holes, they should know where the Steve holes are.
That is true. Well, what if they just want to stink up your property?
I don't know. It seems like a lot to die just to make my property stink. It seems like
It would add more to your already worse property.
This is true. It's all just giving me a headache. Now I'm just thinking about what terrible things are going to happen by next week. The worst tragedy of which would be that the real Steve returns to this podcast because fake Steve is 100 times better and more handsome than real Steve, and nobody wants real Steve back.
And fake James is much, like 100, 200% better than the actual Steve.
Fake James is spectacular.
Yes.
And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here a minute or two early because I don't want to invite those curses to come up here to the non-Steve zone, up here in the wonderful state of Indiana. The pigs are making noises back there. They're making me nervous. So this has been another week of Wrong and Wronger. Subscribe, follow us on YouTube, do whatever you got. Tell a friend. Let's get these numbers up from 3 to 5 or whatever comes after that 3. And as
3
always,
to like 3.5 or 4.
somewhere in there. This has been another week of Wrong and Wronger. As always, 2 wrongs can make a right.